Hi there, I wanted to do a video about plants that thrive in my climate. I'm in the Australian Capital Territory. It gets below freezing in winter and above 30 degrees Celsius in summer. It's not dry by Australian standards, but it may be dry by your standards. And these are the kinds of plants that I can heartily recommend. First up, we have my strawberry patch. Now this is quite an extensive patch. I've just got bird netting up for obvious reasons, and it's just coming towards the end of the season. And all of these plants came from about 3 runners. This was the place in the garden that they took off, and I can heartily recommend them. They're called Red Gauntlet variety, I believe, and they produce in the warm part of the year, every year. They've been really good. This is a rosemary. I've got these growing around the yard as well. They just look after themselves. They don't need much water. They grow well, and they are just a herb, of course, so there's a limit to how much of them you can really eat, but still they're worth having around. And then past these apple trees that haven't produced yet, we've got the end of the boysenberry that grows so well that I had to not have it in the ground anymore. It was just sending roots out in all directions, and I just don't have the energy with chronic fatigue syndrome to constantly dig after these roots and chase them down to keep it under control. But you can see how many canes, big canes, were coming off this little plant, and I fully expect that will still be alive and come back when it warms up again. Now all of these plants I'm showing you are ones that have very little energy put into growing them. And here is a sunroot plant. You put a tiny little tuber of sunroot, also known as Jerusalem artichoke, by the way, but it's not from Jerusalem and isn't an artichoke, so I will call it a sunroot. And you can see it's lifting the bricks here from all of the tubers underneath the ground, and it'll produce much bigger tubers than that. And I've dug up probably 1 kilo from this plant already, and there's plenty more under there. And they'll just stay in the ground over winter, and you just dig them up as you want them. I would recommend not trying to dig them all up at once because they'll go bad. And I've got to say, this has got to be my favourite. It's the ultimate don't do any work plant. It has beautiful flowers that I can't show you anymore, but they're these lovely yellow flowers. And people actually cultivate an ornamental flower that's much smaller and has very similar flowers. It's very nice. Now moving on to the good old pumpkin. Now you obviously all know about these, but I can't emphasize how good an idea it is to grow these things. You put these seeds of the pumpkins in the ground somewhere, like over here I believe it's coming out of the ground, and they just go everywhere. I've guided it up the shed so that it can go up that direction. Produces giant plants, lots of big fruit. This one's a bit funny. It's a shape that reminds me, I don't know if you can see it, but it reminds me more of the other kind of squash, the little yellow ones. But you get your more normal shape. I think these are Kent pumpkins. And there's more up on the shed, and I've got this one that came from the ground that's just sunning up there. Now, the thing to point out about this is not that this is unusual, it's that I didn't put any work into it. All I did was buy a pumpkin from an organic shop with seeds in it, eat the pumpkin, put the seeds in the ground in a few places around the back here, and I've got all of these pumpkins for it. And this is worth a mention as well. This is I believe it's the North American common mallow, Malva neglecta, I think. And it just grows everywhere. Not only do I neglect this, I outright mow it. I mow it, and it still produces a bunch of salad greens for me. Now, it's technically a weed, but I've never cared about silly taxonomies like that. So that is my short list of plants that I can recommend for someone who really does have to cut down the amount of work they want to do and still get food. I've tried a lot of different plants, and these are the only ones I can really recommend. The potatoes over here, if there are any left, they're worth the effort of digging up, but not much more than that. I've tried all sorts of salads. The perpetual spinach is actually doing pretty well, so I guess I should recommend that. It's quite nice. But most of onions and things like that have been a failure here, and I just want things that will look after themselves because they have to do all the work. I'm too sick to do all the work.